The rain in Glasgow always felt like it was trying to scrub the very bones clean. But this particular downpour in late 2010 felt different, heavier, as if it carried the weight of my past. My name is Caius Thorne, and after a decade in the Royal Marines, a life that had carved me from a raw recruit into a hardened combat engineer, I found myself adrift. The streets of Glasgow, usually a vibrant chaos, felt muted, hollow. My discharge papers, crisp and final, were tucked into a drawer in my cramped flat, a tangible testament to a career that had taken me from the dusty, sun-baked plains of Helmand to the claustrophobic, fractured landscapes of Afghanistan's cave systems. 3 months had evaporated in a haze of aimless days, half-hearted online job searches, and too many solitary pints at the local pub. The clatter of civilian life, a jarring counterpoint to the disciplined rhythm I'd known. My flat, meant to be a sanctuary, became a cage, where most nights I stared at the ceiling, restless, a phantom limb of purpose throbbing beneath my ribs. I was returning from a morning run, the Glasgow chill still clinging to my skin, when I saw them. 2 men in suits, dark and impeccably tailored, standing by a sleek black sedan that looked utterly out of place on my grimy residential street. They emanated an aura of controlled power, distinctly American, like shadows from a spy novel. The taller one, Commander Thorne, not a relation, stepped forward as I slowed to a walk. His face was a study in calculated neutrality, eyes like chips of flint. "Caius Thorne?" he asked, his voice a low rumble. "Depends who's asking," I replied, my gaze sweeping over both men, assessing threats, instinctively keeping my distance. "Old habits die hard, even for a civilian." "We represent a joint task force," he offered, his hand extended not for a handshake but to present a business card. It was heavy stock, embossed with nothing but a name and a number. "A task force that could use someone with your particular skill set." "My skill set?" I took the card, the edge of curiosity pricking through my weariness. It was an intriguing bait. The shorter man, his face a lean, intelligent mask, spoke for the first time. "Your extensive experience with underground operations in Afghanistan, specifically the complex cave systems. We've reviewed your classified files. Your performance metrics, your psychological profile, they indicate a unique aptitude for extreme environments, unconventional discoveries, and a remarkable capacity for cognitive reorientation in the face of paradigm-shifting information." My brow furrowed. They knew specifics about my service record that weren't public knowledge, details buried deep in military archives. That meant high-level access, serious interest. A spark ignited within me, the dormant craving for purpose, for something beyond the mundane. "What kind of opportunity are we talking about?" Commander Thorne's lips barely twitched. "Security clearance level 5, a joint operation between several international governments. More details will be provided if you're deemed suitable." What followed was a relentless week of background checks and psychological evaluations that dwarfed anything I'd endured in military service. They picked apart every thread of my mental fabric, asking bizarre hypothetical questions about prolonged isolation, unexpected encounters, and how I processed information that fundamentally contradicted established understanding. They wanted to know about my nightmares, my childhood traumas, my deepest fears. I learned nothing about the actual mission, only that it required an unprecedented level of mental fortitude and adaptability. It was a test, a gauntlet designed to filter out anyone with even a hint of rigidity in their thinking. 2 weeks after that initial encounter, I boarded a military transport plane bound for the Nevada desert, my duffel bag containing only a few personal items. Everything else, I was told, would be provided at the destination. The facility itself was a sprawling, low-slung complex of concrete and steel, camouflaged against the stark desert landscape, surrounded by multiple security perimeters. No signage, no identifiable markings, just men with guns who checked my credentials with chilling efficiency. "Welcome to nowhere, Thorne," the security officer muttered, cracking the barest hint of a smile as he handed back my temporary ID. Commander Kalen is waiting for you in Briefing Room Alpha. Sergeant Vance will escort you. Sergeant Vance, a broad-shouldered American with a military bearing as crisp as mine once was, led me through a labyrinth of identical corridors deep into the heart of the facility. Briefing Room Alpha was like a dozen others I'd seen. Utilitarian, a large table, projection screens. But the man standing at the head of the table commanded attention in a way few officers I'd encountered could. Commander Kalen didn't offer his hand or a smile. He watched me with cold, analytical efficiency. His salt-and-pepper hair was cropped in a perfect military cut, his uniform utterly devoid of wrinkles or imperfections. "Thorne," he stated, a nod in my direction. "Good to have you on board." "Thank you, sir," I replied, my voice steady, though I'm still unclear what exactly I'm on board for. "Take a seat," Kalen directed, his gaze shifting to the door. "The others will be joining us momentarily." I sat, observing as 14 other individuals filtered into the room over the next 10 minutes. They represented a diverse range of ages and physical types, but all carried themselves with the coiled alertness of people with military or high-level intelligence backgrounds. I counted 5 women among them. Based on subtle accents and behavioral cues, I identified Americans, Canadians, Australians, and 3 other Brits besides myself. Kalen began without preamble once everyone was seated. "Each of you has been selected for this task force based on your unique qualifications and, more importantly, your psychological profile." He activated a screen, displaying a satellite image of Antarctica. 6 months ago, our thermal imaging satellites detected an unusual heat signature beneath the ice sheet here. He pointed to a location that meant nothing to me without coordinates. Past expeditions to investigate similar anomalies have disappeared without a trace. Kalen's voice remained clinically detached. "We believe we know why." A heavy, pregnant silence filled the room. I studied the faces of my new colleagues, noting the mix of skepticism, intrigue, and raw curiosity. All been chosen because you can handle extreme isolation." Kalen paused, searching for the right word, "and extraordinary discoveries." Over the next hour, Kalen outlined our training regimen for the coming months. Specialized equipment, extreme weather conditioning, geological training, and communication protocols for various scenarios. What struck me most was what he didn't say, the specifics of what we might find beneath the ice. The careful omission of any direct explanation was a red flag. After the briefing, we were shown to our quarters, Spartan rooms with twin beds. I was paired with Sergeant Vance, the American who had escorted me. "So, what's your read on all this?" Vance asked once we'd settled in, his voice low despite the fact that we were alone. He tossed his duffel onto the opposite bed. I considered my answer carefully. Too much compartmentalization. Nobody has the full picture except Kalen. Vance nodded. "Geothermal anomaly, my ass. You don't assemble a team like this for a scientific expedition." Over the next few days, I observed the rigid information structure of the operation. Different team members received different briefings. Equipment specialists knew nothing about the geological training. Communications experts weren't briefed on the specialized vehicles we would apparently be using. It was textbook need to know, but taken to an extreme that made me increasingly uneasy. It was during my 3rd night at the facility that I overheard Kalen. I'd left my room for the bathroom and passed by a partially open door to one of the secure communication rooms. Kalen's voice drifted out clearly. "Yes, sir. The team is assembled. All preparations on schedule for making contact in January." A pause. "We've updated the diplomatic protocols as requested. If they're as advanced as the intelligence suggests, we'll need to establish clear boundaries from the beginning." I moved past quickly before I was discovered, my mind racing. Making contact, diplomatic protocols, I suddenly understood. We weren't searching for something in Antarctica. We were meeting someone. The next morning, I caught Kalen alone in the corridor outside the mess hall. "Permission to speak freely, sir." He looked at me with those steel-gray eyes. Go ahead, Thorne. We're not investigating a thermal anomaly, I said, keeping my voice steady, watching his reaction. We're preparing for contact with whoever lives under the ice. For the briefest moment, surprise flickered across his features, quickly replaced by calculation. He glanced up and down the empty corridor. Walk with me, Thorne. We headed toward the training area, his pace measured and unhurried. What made you reach that conclusion? He asked. Your conversation last night. Making contact, diplomatic protocols. That's not the language of scientific exploration. Kalen nodded slightly. Most of your teammates haven't put it together yet. Your file mentioned your analytical skills, but I'm still impressed. What are we really preparing for, sir? He stopped walking and turned to face me. Evidence of an advanced civilization living beneath Antarctica was discovered in 1938 by German explorers. The Americans confirmed it during reconnaissance missions in the 1950s. We've maintained observation ever since, but never established direct contact. My mind reeled at the implications. Until now, I said. What changed? They did. Kalen's expression remained impassive. 6 months ago, we began receiving radio transmissions on specific military frequencies. They initiated contact. Our mission, first official diplomatic contact. The training will prepare you for meeting potentially hostile entities in extreme conditions. Kalen's voice hardened. This information is not to be shared with the other team members. They'll be briefed when necessary. I nodded, though questions multiplied in my mind. Who were these underground dwellers? How had they remained hidden for so long? And why contact us now? One more thing, Thorne. Kalen looked at me intently. You were selected partly because your psychological profile suggests you can handle major changes in how you see reality. Not everyone can. Remember that when you meet them. As he walked away, I stood in the corridor, trying to grasp what awaited us beneath the Antarctic ice. Everything I thought I knew about human history and our place on this planet was about to change. That night, sleep evaded me as questions multiplied in my mind. Who were these beings living beneath the earth? How had they remained hidden for 15 millennia? What did they truly want from us? The real training began the next morning. Gone were the general briefings, replaced by a regimen so specialized it could only have one purpose, preparing us for something extraordinary. Our days started at 500 hours with physical conditioning tailored for extreme environments. The standard military fitness approach quickly gave way to specialized exercises developed for astronauts and deep-sea explorers, training designed for bodies under unusual pressure and stress. Your muscles will need to function efficiently with less oxygen, explained Dr. Anya Petrova, the team's lead xenobiologist and medical expert, during our first specialized session. Her voice was precise, clinical, and her eyes held a spark of intense intellectual curiosity. The atmospheric composition will differ significantly from what your bodies are accustomed to. We spent weeks learning to use experimental breathing apparatus that recycled air while adding precise oxygen mixtures. The equipment was lightweight but complex, with digital displays monitoring blood oxygen levels and environmental toxins. This isn't standard military gear, Vance muttered to me during our third training session, his voice low. This is next-generation tech, not even available to special forces yet. I nodded, noting how the equipment seemed designed specifically for our mission, rather than adapted from existing technology. Someone had been developing this for years. By the second month, we moved to communication training. The devices looked deceptively simple earpieces with attached microphones and wristband controls, but performed like nothing I'd seen before. These transmitters operate on frequencies that can penetrate dense rock and ice, the communications specialist explained. Signal degradation is minimal, even through 2 kilometers of solid material. During a practice exercise in a nearby cave system, I tested the range limitations by venturing deeper than instructed. The signal remained crystal clear, despite the mass of rock between me and the surface team. This technology wasn't just advanced, It was revolutionary. Dr. Petrova's scientific briefings grew increasingly specific. She taught us about atmospheric composition in isolated subterranean environments, geothermal energy systems, and the biological adaptations needed for underground survival. Pay careful attention to these mineral formations, she said during a geology lecture, displaying images of unusual crystalline structures. They indicate the presence of geothermal activity that could support substantial energy requirements. Energy requirements for what? I wondered. The implications were clear. We weren't preparing to find primitive cave dwellers. In the third month, we began training with prototype vehicles, sleek, cylindrical craft designed for narrow tunnels. The controls were intuitive, responding to the slightest touch. During one simulation, I navigated a virtual tunnel system that twisted and narrowed unpredictably. Excellent work, Thorne, Kalen noted afterward, reviewing my performance metrics. You adapt quickly to unfamiliar technology. Thank you, sir, I replied, though I'm curious about the design parameters. These vehicles seem built for specific tunnel dimensions. Do we have advanced knowledge of the exact environment? His eyes narrowed slightly. The designs are based on preliminary data from ground-penetrating radar. Focus on mastering the equipment, not questioning its origins. The psychological conditioning intensified in month 4. We spent hours in sensory deprivation tanks, training our minds to endure isolation and disorientation. The sessions grew longer each week, pushing the boundaries of mental endurance. After one particularly grueling 9-hour session, I emerged to find 2 team members being escorted from the facility. What happened? I asked Vance as we watched them leave. Failed their psych evaluations, he replied quietly. They showed some of us fabricated images yesterday. Humanoid figures, but different. Those 2 didn't handle it well. Different how? Vance hesitated. Larger eyes, elongated limbs. Adaptations you'd expect from generations underground. Command wanted to see our reactions before we encounter the real thing. That night, I lay awake connecting the pieces. The breathing apparatus designed for different atmospheric conditions. Communications equipment that worked through rock. Vehicles built for specific tunnel systems. We weren't being prepared for discovery. We were being prepared for an encounter, and they were testing us for susceptibility to the truly alien. During the 5th month, I noticed Kalen spent increasing time in private communications with Washington. 3 times I passed the secure communication room to find guards posted outside, while he spoke with someone he referred to only as Director Kalen. My performance evaluations consistently ranked among the highest in the team. I excelled at adaptation exercises, scenario simulations, and the increasingly complex technical training. This earned me a certain latitude with Kalen, which I carefully leveraged during a tactical planning session. Sir, our training suggests we're preparing for contact with a technologically advanced society, not primitive conditions, I stated. The satellite data must show more than just heat signatures. The room fell silent. Several team members shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between Kalen and me. After a measured pause, Kalen nodded. Perceptive, Thorne. Yes. Ground-penetrating radar and quantum imaging have detected electromagnetic signatures consistent with advanced energy systems. We believe whatever, or whoever, lives beneath the ice possesses technology that may rival or exceed our own. His admission surprised everyone. For many team members, this was the first confirmation of what our training had implied. The air in the room seemed to crackle with the unspoken dot in December 2011. 6 months after our arrival at the facility, we received our final briefings. The team gathered in the main conference room, now reduced to 15 members after the psychological washouts. Kalen stood before a high-resolution display showing detailed Antarctic topography. What I'm about to share is classified at the highest levels, he began. 3 months ago, we established radio contact with representatives claiming to be from an advanced human civilization beneath Antarctica. They speak multiple Earth languages and have expressed interest in formal diplomatic relations. Despite my earlier suspicions, hearing it stated so plainly sent a chilling tremor down my spine. Several team members gasped or muttered under their breath. Your mission is to establish diplomatic contact, assess their technological capabilities, and evaluate potential threats to surface nations. You've been selected and trained for this specific purpose, to handle first contact with a human civilization that has evolved separately from our own for thousands of years. Dr. Petrova stepped forward. Their initial communications suggest they branched from surface humanity approximately 15,000 years ago, during the last major ice age. If accurate, their evolutionary path and technological development have occurred in isolation from ours. Precisely, Kalen continued. You depart in 3 days. Before then, each of you will receive medical implants, tracking devices and neural monitors that will record your experiences and vital signs throughout the mission. The medical procedures took place that afternoon. I watched the surgeon insert a small device at the base of my skull, supposedly to monitor neural activity and stress responses. A second implant went into my left forearm, described as a location tracker with emergency communication capabilities. That evening, I returned to my quarters to find subtle signs of disturbance. Items moved slightly from their positions, my personal notebook at a different angle than I'd left it. Someone had searched my room. Whether they found anything of concern, I couldn't tell. As I contemplated this development, Vance knocked on my door. "Got a minute?" he asked, his expression guarded. I let him in and closed the door. "I saw you questioning Kalen today," he said, keeping his voice low. "You're right about a lot of things, but you need to watch yourself. This isn't my first operation involving them. You've encountered this civilization before." His eyes flicked to the corners of the room, checking for surveillance devices. "Let's just say certain agencies have known about our friends under the ice for longer than they're admitting. Previous candidates who asked too many questions disappeared from the program. Official record says they failed psychological evaluations, like our 2 colleagues last month." Vance shrugged. Maybe not. Just keep your head down and do the job. Whatever you discover down there, some things are better left unsaid until we know who's really running this operation." He left shortly after. One thing was increasingly clear. Our mission had layers of purpose unknown to most of the team. As I packed my gear for Antarctica, I carefully considered my position. Whatever waited beneath the ice, whatever Kalen's true orders might be, I was committed now. The tracking device in my arm and the neural monitor at the base of my skull ensured that even my thoughts were potentially under surveillance. In 3 days, we would journey to the most isolated continent on Earth to meet beings who had been watching us from below for millennia. I was prepared for the unknown environment and potential technological marvels we might encounter. But what I was truly prepared for was to find out who was pulling the strings. The January air cut through my thermal gear as our military transport plane landed at McMurdo Station, Antarctica. Even in summer, temperatures could freeze exposed skin in minutes. 6 months of training had prepared us for many things, but the raw reality of this isolation hit differently than simulations. We spent 3 days acclimatizing while maintaining our cover as a specialized climate research team. The regular station personnel gave us curious looks. We clearly weren't scientists, despite the patches on our jackets. "Remember your cover stories," Kalen reminded us during our final briefing. Minimal interaction with station staff. On the 4th morning, we boarded unmarked helicopters before dawn. Vance sat beside me. "Point of no return," he said quietly over the helicopter noise. "You'll know it when you see it." After 3 hours flying over endless white terrain, we landed at coordinates 80 degrees S, 65 degrees E. As we approached on foot, a cluster of red tents came into view, arranged in a perfect circle around a central structure. The setup mimicked a typical research station, except for the armed guards positioned at regular intervals around the perimeter. Climate researchers don't usually carry military-grade weapons, I said to Vance. He nodded. Or have motion sensors and ground-penetrating radar. Guards checked our credentials twice before allowing us into the central tent. Inside, the research station facade disappeared completely. The tent housed an elevator shaft. Dr. Petrova examined the shaft lining. Fascinating composite, she murmured. It's maintaining consistent temperature despite the surrounding ice. Kalen gathered us around a digital display showing what lay beneath us. This shaft descends 500 meters through the ice cap. From there, we'll transfer to specialized vehicles for the horizontal journey. The elevator itself was silent as we descended, no mechanical sounds or vibrations. Whatever technology powered it wasn't standard military equipment. We dropped 500 meters in less than a minute, emerging into an underground hangar carved from the ice. 6 vehicles waited, resembling a cross between military transports and snowmobiles, with treads designed specifically for ice traversal. "Mount up," Kalen ordered. 60 kilometers to the antechamber. The journey through ice tunnels was surreal. Our headlights illuminated walls of compressed blue ice that had formed over thousands of years. The tunnels themselves were too perfect, uniform width and height, with smooth floors that accommodated our vehicles easily. "Were these tunnels already here when we found this place?" I asked over the comms. "Focus on your driving, Thorne," came Kalen's immediate reply. Vance's voice came through on a private channel moments later. "No, they weren't." The implication sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the surrounding ice. After 2 hours of driving, the tunnel opened into a vast space that stole my breath. Kalen had called it the antechamber. The ceiling arched at least 30 meters overhead. But what caught everyone's attention were the walls. They were covered in symbols, thousands of characters carved into the ice with astonishing precision. They resembled a hybrid of Sanskrit and Egyptian hieroglyphics, flowing in organized patterns across the surfaces. Dr. Petrova immediately began documenting everything with specialized equipment. "These are extraordinary," she breathed. "The patterns suggest a mathematical basis to the language, and the preservation in the ice. These could be thousands of years old." The security team fanned out, establishing a perimeter with practiced efficiency. They placed sensors at regular intervals around the chamber, all feeding data back to a central console monitored by Kalen's second-in-command. "All readings normal, sir," he reported. "Thermal imaging shows no movement beyond the southern wall." I turned my attention to the southern wall. Unlike the other surfaces covered in symbols, this wall was perfectly smooth, an unnatural expanse of polished, dark material. "That's our entry point," Kalen announced, directing equipment to be positioned facing it. "Prepare for final descent protocol." Trained for this moment for months, but standing in an ancient ice chamber beneath Antarctica, preparing to make contact with an unknown civilization, felt entirely different from any simulation. I checked my specialized breathing apparatus and communication equipment, noting that several team members were doing the same, with expressions ranging from focused concentration to poorly concealed anxiety. Then it happened. Without warning, a section of the smooth southern wall simply slid aside. The opening appeared without sound. 3 figures emerged from the opening. They looked human, but with differences that immediately registered as other. They stood taller than average, at least 6.5 feet, with slender builds. Their skin was pale, with a subtle, almost imperceptible luminescence that seemed to capture and reflect the smallest amount of available light. Their eyes were larger than human norm, set in faces of striking symmetry. All 3 wore silver jumpsuits that fit perfectly to their bodies, made of material unlike any fabric I'd seen. It looked metallic but seemed soft. The central figure spoke, delivering the third and greatest shock. "Welcome to the outer threshold," he said in perfect, unaccented English. "We've been expecting your arrival." The chamber fell silent. Our team froze in various positions, some reaching for weapons, others simply staring in disbelief. Kalen recovered first, stepping forward with practiced confidence. "I am Commander Kalen, leading this expedition on behalf of a coalition of surface nations. The central figure inclined his head slightly. I am Ambassador Lyra, diplomatic representative of the Viridian Council. His eyes swept over our group with calm assessment. We've monitored your approach since you established your base camp above. Before that, we observed your surface communications to learn your languages and customs. Dr. Petrova stepped forward. You monitor our communications for how long? Lyra's lips curved into a subtle, almost imperceptible smile. We maintain observation outposts near the surface. Radio waves pass easily through ice. We've studied all major surface languages for over a century. I analyzed every aspect of Lyra and his companions. Their movements were fluid and precise, suggesting both physical efficiency and cultural grace. Their voices carried perfectly in the ice chamber without seeming to project. How is survival possible in these conditions? I asked before thinking about protocol. Lyra turned his attention to me. Your name is Caius Thorn. To answer your question, Caius Thorn, what you see here is merely the threshold. This is not where we live. He gestured toward the opening behind him. We would like to invite you to witness Viridia, our home. There, your questions about our survival and history can be properly addressed. Kalen stepped forward. Before we proceed, we need to establish security protocols for our team. Of course, Lyra replied smoothly. Your weapons and communications equipment will function within our territories, though certain energy signatures may experience interference. We have no intention of isolating or disarming your team. This concession seemed to surprise Kalen, who had clearly expected resistance on the weapons issue. As the technical and security staff began preparations for entering the opening, Kalen moved to my side and gripped my arm just above the elbow. A word, Thorn. He pulled me several meters away from the main group, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I saw the look on your face. You're already fascinated by them. His grip tightened. Remember, your first loyalty is to this mission, to the surface. Regardless of what we discover beyond that door, regardless of how impressive or benevolent they might appear, we have our orders. Which are what exactly? I challenged quietly, because diplomatic contact seemed to be going well so far. Kalen's eyes hardened. Our primary mission is to assess and secure information. Technology, strategic advantage. These are our objectives, not friendship. He released my arm and returned to the main group, leaving me with a cold feeling that had nothing to do with the surrounding ice. I watched as Lyra consulted briefly with his companions. Their conversation was inaudible despite the chamber's acoustics. Whatever communication passed between them seemed to reach quick resolution. Lyra turned back to us. We are prepared to escort you now. The journey to Viridia will take approximately 1 hour through our transit system. As our team gathered equipment and prepared to enter the doorway, I found myself watching both sides with equal wariness. The Viridians with their perfect composure and ancient presence on one side, Kalen with his hidden agenda and talk of securing on the other. Vance appeared at my shoulder. Quite the reception committee, he murmured. Ready to see what's behind door number 1. Not sure anyone's ready for that, I replied, but I'm more concerned about what we're bringing with us. He nodded slightly. Watch your back and not just around them. With that warning, he moved forward with the advance team, leaving me to follow with the unsettling awareness that I was caught between two worlds, neither of which I could fully trust. Lyra stood by the opening, waiting with patience that suggested he could remain there indefinitely if necessary. When I approached, he tilted his head slightly, looking at me. You have questions, Caius Thorn, he said. It wasn't a question. About 1 million, I admitted. His subtle smile returned. Then let us proceed to where answers await. Through the doorway, I stepped into a tunnel that seemed to defy all natural laws. Instead of rough ice formations, the walls were perfectly smooth, with an odd luminescence that provided enough light to see without being harsh on the eyes. This material, Dr. Petrova said, running her fingers along the wall as we walked deeper into the passage. It's not ice anymore, some kind of composite. a silicate-based material of our design, Lyra explained. It maintains consistent temperature and provides illumination without external power sources. The tunnel widened into a large chamber where several vehicles waited. They resembled elongated pods with no visible wheels or propulsion systems that hovered a few inches above the ground. "These will transport us to Veridia," Lyra said. "The journey takes approximately 1 hour through our transit network." "Electromagnetic propulsion?" Dr. Petrova asked, examining the vehicles with obvious fascination. Lyra's lips curved in that unnervingly perfect smile. "A simplified explanation, but essentially correct. We boarded the vehicles, 6 team members to each pod, with 1 Veridian guide. I found myself sharing with Vance, Dr. Petrova, and 3 security personnel. Kalen traveled in the lead vehicle with Lyra. No handles or seat belts were visible, yet when the pod accelerated, some invisible force kept us comfortably in place without restraint." "Inertial dampening," Dr. Petrova whispered, her eyes wide. "Theoretical physics made real." Our journey through the tunnel network was like nothing I'd experienced. We moved at extraordinary speeds, yet felt almost no sensation of movement. The tunnels occasionally branched or merged with others, forming an intricate network that suggested centuries of engineering. Glowing symbols appeared at intervals along the walls, navigational markers perhaps, or something else entirely. "How far down are we?" I asked our guide, a younger Veridian named Sela. "Currently, we are traveling at approximately 2.7 kilometers beneath the ice sheet," she replied. "The depth will increase as we approach Veridia proper." Vance sat beside me, his expression controlled but his eyes taking in everything. I noticed his hand occasionally brushing the sidearm holstered beneath his jacket. "Remarkable engineering," he commented softly. "Perfect tolerances on these tunnels." Hours passed as we traveled deeper into the earth. The network of tunnels became increasingly complex, with more branches and intersections. Occasionally, we passed smaller outposts, stations with Veridians working at control panels or monitoring equipment. "Checkpoints," Vance murmured. "They're tracking everything that moves through these tunnels." Finally, our vehicle slowed as we approached what appeared to be a massive wall of the same luminescent material that lined the tunnels. A seam appeared in its center, widening to create an opening large enough for our vehicles to pass through. What lay beyond stole my breath. We emerged onto a platform overlooking a vast underground world. Veridia stretched before us, an enormous cavern that extended farther than seemed possible. The ceiling arched kilometers above us, studded with what looked like crystals that refracted light throughout the space. But most stunning was the artificial sun suspended at the very top, a perfect sphere of golden white light that illuminated everything below with an approximation of natural daylight. "My God," Dr. Petrova whispered beside me. The city itself defied description. Structures of varying shapes and sizes extended upward from the cavern floor, some reaching nearly to the ceiling. They weren't buildings in the conventional sense, more like sculpted formations that blended organically with their surroundings. Connecting them were a network of bridges, platforms, and what appeared to be the same electromagnetic transit system we had used to arrive. "Welcome to Veridia," Lyra said as he approached from the lead vehicle. "One of 7 primary habitation centers of our civilization." "7?" I asked, still struggling to process the scale of what I was seeing. "Yes, connected by the transit network you experienced. Our total population remains stable at approximately 2 million inhabitants across all centers. 2 million people living beneath the Earth's surface, completely unknown to the world above." The implications were staggering. Kalen stood beside Lyra, his military composure temporarily shaken by the sight before us. "How long has this been here?" "Veridia was established approximately 15,000 years ago, during what your scholars call the last glacial maximum," Lyra replied. "When surface conditions became increasingly hostile, a portion of humanity chose to seek shelter beneath the earth rather than migrate across the surface. That contradicts our understanding of human technological development, Dr. Petrova interjected. The capabilities needed to create this, she gestured at the vast cavern, weren't possible for humans 15,000 years ago. Lyra nodded. You are correct. We were aided by the progenitors. The progenitors? I asked. Those who came before, he said, his tone shifting subtly. Their origins and ultimate fate remain subjects of scholarly debate even among our historians. What matters is that they provided the foundation for our civilization. Knowledge of geothermal energy, artificial illumination, and sustainable underground habitation. I noted how quickly he'd pivoted away from details about these mysterious benefactors. Before I could press further, we were ushered toward another transport platform. You will be provided accommodations in our diplomatic quarter, Lyra explained as we boarded. From there, you may rest and prepare for more comprehensive exchanges tomorrow. The diplomatic quarter turned out to be a collection of structures near the eastern edge of the cavern. The interiors were surprisingly familiar, furnished with beds, chairs, and tables that resembled surface furniture, though made from materials I didn't recognize. We've prepared these spaces based on our understanding of your comfort requirements, Lyra explained. If adjustments are needed, please inform the attendants. The attendants were younger Veridians who maintained the same studied politeness I noticed in all our interactions. Their movements seemed precisely calculated, neither too casual nor too distant. Perfect diplomatic hosts, yet something about their careful behavior suggested we were being evaluated with every interaction. A remarkable achievement, Kalen commented as he surveyed the accommodations. Your civilization has flourished in isolation. Not complete isolation, Lyra corrected. We maintain observation posts near the surface. Your radio communications have been particularly informative over the past century. That explained their perfect English and knowledge of current events. I wondered what else they had learned while we remained oblivious to their existence. May I ask why you chose now to initiate contact? Dr. Petrova inquired. Lyra's expression grew more serious. Necessity. Our sensors have detected increasing drilling activities from surface nations. Several operations have approached dangerously close to our outer tunnel systems. Oil exploration, Kalen suggested. Among other activities, Lyra replied with a pointed look. Rather than risk accidental discovery that might prove destabilizing for both societies, we determined that controlled diplomatic relations would be preferable. After providing us with communication devices to request assistance if needed, Lyra and the other Veridians departed, leaving our team to settle into the diplomatic quarter. Everyone gather in the central room in 1 hour, Kalen ordered. Full debrief after we've had time to process what we've seen. As the team dispersed, I took the opportunity to explore my assigned quarters. The space was minimalist but comfortable, with smooth walls of that same luminescent material providing soft light. No visible cameras or monitoring devices, but something told me observation didn't require visible technology here. I ran my fingers along the wall, wondering what sensors might lie beneath. The entire setup felt too perfect, accommodation built to make us comfortable while keeping us contained in a specific area. A soft knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Vance stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. Mind if I come in? He asked, voice low. I nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. He closed the door and performed a quick visual sweep of the room before speaking. "He's seen this technology before," he said quietly. 3 years ago. Classified mission in Antarctica. Different sector from our entry point. I was shocked. You've been here before. Not here specifically. A smaller outpost. My team discovered it accidentally during what was supposed to be a routine security patrol of a research station. He lowered his voice further. We were sworn to secrecy. Records classified at the highest level. Does Kalen know about this? He was my commanding officer on that mission. I thought about this. So all this, I gestured around us. The months of training, the elaborate first contact scenario, it's all theater for most of the team. This is first contact for them, Vance said, a grim line to his lips. Only a handful of people topside know the truth. And what is the truth exactly? Before Vance could answer, a chime sounded, signaling the approaching debrief. He shook his head. Later. Just keep your eyes open. The central room had been arranged for our meeting, with chairs positioned in a circle. Kalen stood at the center as we assembled. What we've witnessed today represents the most significant discovery in human history, he began. A parallel human civilization that has developed independently for thousands of years. His words rang hollow now that I knew this wasn't the revelation he was pretending it to be. Sir, I interrupted, a decision made in the moment that I might later regret. Is this truly the first contact between our governments and the Viridians? The room fell silent. Kalen's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at me. Clarify your question, Thorne. Vance mentioned a previous encounter with similar technology during a classified operation. I'm wondering if select governments already knew about Viridia before this mission. Kalen's expression hardened, but he maintained his composure. Some surface agencies have had limited encounters with outlying Viridian installations, he admitted. However, this is the first official diplomatic mission to their central civilization. So we're not so much discovering them as they are officially revealing themselves, Dr. Petrova concluded. Precisely, Kalen replied. And now we need to focus on the opportunity this presents. Dr. Petrova, I want comprehensive documentation of their technological systems. Security team, maintain standard protocols and mapping of all accessible areas. As he continued assigning tasks, I sat back, watching the reactions around the room. Most team members seemed to accept Kalen's explanation, though I noticed Vance looking at me carefully. When the meeting concluded, I lingered as others filed out. The vast underground city housed technologies beyond our current capabilities, a population that had developed in parallel to surface humanity, and mysteries about these progenitors that even the Viridians seemed reluctant to fully explain. But perhaps most troubling was the realization forming in my mind. Our mission had been presented as a diplomatic first contact, but Kalen's instructions focused overwhelmingly on information gathering, technology assessment, and strategic mapping. This wasn't about establishing relations. It was about something else entirely. Something Kalen and whoever he reported to considered far more valuable than diplomacy. As I returned to my quarters, the artificial sun above the city dimmed gradually, simulating sunset. In the fading light, Viridia took on a different quality. Buildings illuminated from within, pathways marked by soft, glowing trails. Beautiful, sophisticated, and completely hidden from the world I knew. Whatever the true purpose of our mission, one thing was certain. We weren't here to make friends. We were here to take something back. Information, technology, advantage. And I found myself caught between worlds, unsure where my loyalties should truly lie. 2 weeks in Viridia passed quickly. Each morning, I woke to the artificial sun, gradually brightening the ceiling of my quarters, mimicking dawn despite being kilometers below the Antarctic ice. The technology surrounding us made everything I'd seen in military service look primitive by comparison. Our first week followed a structured program of guided tour and presentations. The Viridians seemed determined to showcase their achievements while carefully controlling our access. Ambassador Lyra served as our primary liaison. Today, we will visit our medical sciences division, Lyra announced on our 3rd day. We believe this area may be of particular interest to your civilization. The medical facility occupied an entire section of the city, a complex of interconnected structures attached to the cavern walls. Dr. Petrova could barely contain her excitement as a Viridian physician demonstrated their diagnostic technology, a handheld device that scanned body systems without physical contact. This identifies cellular abnormalities at their earliest stages, the physician explained. Most conditions your surface medicine considers incurable are simply addressed before they manifest symptoms. Cancer, Alzheimer's, autoimmune disorders, Dr. Petrova asked, her voice laced with awe. all effectively eliminated from our population centuries ago, came the calm reply. I watched Kalen's face during these demonstrations. While the rest of us showed amazement, his expression remained calculated, his eyes constantly checking everything. He was taking inventory of assets. The energy systems proved equally remarkable. On our fifth day, we visited a geothermal tap that extended deep into the Earth's crust. This single facility powers all of Viridia, our guide explained, standing beside a pulsing column of blue-white light. The energy is drawn directly from the planetary core, converted through processes your physics has theorized but not yet implemented. Zero emissions. Limitless power, Vance murmured beside me. How many of these facilities exist? Kalen asked suddenly. Our guide hesitated before answering. There are 17 major geothermal taps across our network. Each serves multiple habitation centers. I noted how Kalen nodded slightly, storing this information, not the technological wonder, but the strategic distribution. By the end of the first week, we'd established a routine. Mornings spent touring Viridian achievements, afternoons documenting our observations, evenings in the diplomatic quarter comparing notes. But something changed after our visit to the transportation hub. The transportation network connected all 7 Viridian habitation centers through the same electromagnetic tunnels we'd experienced on arrival. The central hub contained a 3-dimensional holographic map showing the entire system, thousands of kilometers of tunnels spanning beneath continents and ocean floors alike. The primary network was established by the progenitors, Lyra explained as we stared at the glowing pathways. We've expanded and maintained it over millennia. These extend beneath every continent, Kalen observed, studying the map with particular intensity. Yes, though many peripheral tunnels were sealed after the Great Division. Great Division? I asked. Lyra's expression became guarded. A period of conflict approximately 8,000 years ago. Some factions wished to maintain regular contact with the surface world. Others advocated complete separation for security. The separatists prevailed. That evening, I noticed Kalen did not join us for the usual debriefing. When I passed his quarters later, I heard his voice behind the closed door, speaking in low, urgent tones. This became a pattern over the following days. Kalen was increasingly absent, engaged in private meetings with senior Viridian officials. On our 8th day, we toured the agricultural sector. Vast chambers housed hydroponic systems bathed in precisely calibrated light. Plants grew in spiral patterns, maximizing space in 3 dimensions rather than the flat fields of surface farming. We produce all nutritional requirements for our population within these chambers, our guide, a younger Viridian named Aris, explained. The system is entirely self-sustaining. While the rest of the team moved ahead, examining the vertical growing structures, I hung back with Aris. I'm curious about something, I said quietly. In all your observations of the surface world, have you ever intervened? Aris glanced around before answering. This is not information typically shared with surface visitors. I understand, I pressed. But it would help me contextualize your civilization's relationship with ours. She hesitated, then spoke softly. There have been occasions when limited intervention was deemed necessary. Your Cuban Missile Crisis, for instance. Certain communication failures that might have escalated to nuclear exchange were redirected. The revelation sent a chill down my spine. You prevented nuclear war. The Council determined that radioactive contamination on such a scale would eventually threaten our habitats. Similar calculations have motivated other interventions throughout your history. Before I could ask more, she moved forward to rejoin the group, leaving me with troubling questions about how much of surface history had been subtly shaped by unseen hands. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Kalen's secretive behavior, the knowledge that Viridians had influenced surface events, and the implication of their advanced technology. Something wasn't adding up about our mission parameters. My opportunity came unexpectedly on the 10th day. Our group had returned from touring a cultural archive when Kalen announced he needed to refresh before the evening meal. I noticed he'd left his communications device on a side table in the common area, an uncharacteristic oversight for someone so disciplined. I waited until the room cleared, then quickly accessed the device. My military background included signals intelligence. I knew how to navigate secure communications without leaving traces. What I found confirmed my suspicions. A message thread with someone identified only as Director Kalen contained explicit instructions. Priority objectives remain defense systems and propulsion technology. Geological mapping of all access points is essential. Prepare preliminary assessment of acquisition challenges. Acquisition, not understanding or diplomatic exchange. Acquisition. I memorized key details before returning the device exactly as I'd found it. When Vance entered the common area a few minutes later, I motioned him to follow me to a spot near a flowing water feature where conversation would be harder to overhear. I need to know something, I said without preamble. What's the real mission here? Vance's expression confirmed he knew more than he'd shared. What did you find? Kalen's communicating with someone called Director Kalen. They're mapping Viridian defenses, cataloging technology for acquisition. This isn't a diplomatic mission, he sighed, shoulders dropping slightly. Not for everyone on the team, no. The official parameters are exactly what you were told. Establish diplomatic contact, cultural exchange. But certain team members have secondary objectives, military intelligence gathering and more. Mapping the tunnel network, identifying structural weaknesses, cataloging technology with military applications. Vance lowered his voice further. Some of us were briefed differently before deployment. Why tell me now? Because you're smart enough to figure it out anyway, and because I'm not sure I agree with the approach. He glanced around the empty space. Look, these people aren't a threat. They could have wiped us out centuries ago if they wanted to. That evening, I paid closer attention to my teammates' movements around our quarters and during our tour of a Viridian educational center. 3 security team members I'd previously assessed as particularly loyal to Kalen separated briefly from the group at strategic intervals. Each time they returned, they'd adjusted something on their equipment belts. After dinner, while everyone retired to their quarters, I retraced our path through the education center. In a recessed corner near an environmental control panel, I found it. A small device, no larger than my thumbnail, attached to the wall. The design was sophisticated but recognizable to anyone with military intelligence training. A surveillance transmitter designed to capture both audio and specific energy signatures. Similar devices were likely spread throughout every facility we'd visited. We weren't just gathering information during our tour. We were bugging Viridia, preparing for something beyond diplomatic relations. As I returned to the diplomatic quarter, I passed a large assembly chamber where council meetings were held. Through the partially open doors, I glimpsed Kalen in conversation with several Viridians, including one female figure whose bearing commanded attention even from a distance. Unlike Lyra's careful diplomacy, her gestures were more direct, her stance authoritative. I slipped past without being noticed, but the image stayed with me. Kalen engaging with Viridian leadership while simultaneously orchestrating covert surveillance of their civilization. That night, lying in my quarters under kilometers of Antarctic ice, I faced an uncomfortable realization. I had been selected for this mission because of my cave warfare experience, analytical abilities, and psychological stability. But no one had questioned which side I would choose if forced to make a moral decision between mission objectives and preventing harm. I stared at the softly glowing ceiling, weighing loyalty against ethics. The Viridians had shared knowledge freely, offering insights into technology that could transform life on the surface. In return, we were planting bugs and assessing their vulnerabilities. As the artificial sun began its programmed dawn cycle, I made my decision. Whatever happened next, I needed to understand the full scope of Kalen's plan before I could determine my response. The fate of two civilizations might depend on what unfolded in the coming days. By the start of our third week in Veridia, the air had changed. The Veridian perfect hospitality continued on the surface, but their demeanor had shifted subtly. Guards appeared at intersections where none had stood before. Access to certain areas became restricted without explanation. Lyra's diplomatic pleasantries seemed more rehearsed, his eyes looking at us with increased alertness. I noticed these changes during our morning tour of a communications facility. While the others marveled at holographic data transmission, I counted the new security personnel, at least double from the previous week. Something had changed, and I suspected it involved the surveillance devices Kalen's team had planted throughout the city. That afternoon, a young Veridian aide approached me as our group returned to the diplomatic quarter. "Caius Thorne, High Sentinel Thuron requests your presence," she said quietly. "Alone." Vance caught my eye from across the room, his expression questioning. I gave him a subtle nod. I'd fill him in later. "When are you available?" I asked. "If you're available now, I'll escort you." I followed her through corridors I hadn't seen before, deeper into the administrative section of Veridia. The architecture grew more formal here, high ceilings with intricate patterns of light embedded in the walls. We passed through 3 separate security checkpoints, each staffed by Veridians with a military look compared to their civilian counterparts. The aide stopped before a set of doors made from a material that resembled polished obsidian. "High Sentinel Thuron awaits you inside," she said, then departed. The doors slid open silently. I stepped into a circular chamber with a domed ceiling that displayed what looked like real-time star patterns, impossible given our location beneath the Antarctic ice. In the center stood the woman I recognized from glimpses during Kalen's meetings. Taller than most Veridians, High Sentinel Thuron turned to face me. Her age was difficult to determine. She could have passed for 50 in surface terms, though I knew Veridians lived significantly longer lives. "Caius Thorne," she said, her voice deeper and more resonant than Lyra's. "Thank you for coming. Please join me." She gestured to a seating area with 2 chairs positioned beside a small fountain that bubbled with luminescent blue water. "I've been hoping for an opportunity to speak with you directly," she continued once I was seated. "You've shown particular insight during your time with us." I kept my expression neutral. "I appreciate the invitation, High Sentinel Thuron, please." She studied me for a moment, her larger-than-human eyes unblinking. "I'll be direct, Caius. Our monitoring systems have detected surveillance devices placed throughout Veridia during your team's visits. Sophisticated technology, though primitive by our standards." My stomach dropped. "They knew. You don't seem surprised," she observed. I weighed my options carefully. Loyalty to my team versus the ethics of what we were doing. The surveillance wasn't officially part of my mission parameters, but I'd said nothing when I discovered it. "I became aware of the devices recently," I admitted. "Not all team members were informed of this aspect of the mission. Yet you said nothing." I was still determining the best course of action. Thuron nodded, seemingly satisfied with my honesty. "Rather than confront your team directly, I wanted to understand the surface government's true intentions. Perhaps you can illuminate this for me." I had to decide. My next words would affect relations between our civilizations and likely my own fate. "Based on communications I've intercepted, Commander Kalen appears to have military objectives beyond our stated diplomatic mission," I said, choosing each word carefully. "Technology assessment, defense capabilities, access points to your tunnel system. His orders seem focused on acquisition rather than exchange." Thuron sighed, a surprisingly human gesture. "I'm not surprised, though I am disappointed. We had hoped this official contact might be different." She rose and walked to a control panel embedded in the wall. With a gesture, she activated a display showing a timeline of dates and locations. 1947, New Mexico. 1968, East Antarctica. 1984, Ellesmere Island. 2003, South Georgia. She pointed to each in turn. Previous surface expeditions that attempted similar intelligence gathering. Some military, some scientific in appearance, all with the same objective, to assess and potentially acquire our technology. I stared at the display, processing the implications. This wasn't the first contact scenario Kalen had presented to us. Surface governments had known about the Viridians for decades. The Council debated extensively before allowing your team access to Viridia, Thuron continued. Many argued against it, citing these previous violations. But some of us believe that formal diplomatic recognition might lead to more productive engagement. Her expression hardened slightly. I'm beginning to think the skeptics were correct. Not everyone on our team shares Kalen's agenda, I told her. Some of us genuinely want peaceful exchange. I know that. That's why you're here and not in detention. Thuron returned to her seat. Your ethical conflict has been evident in your neural patterns since you discovered the surveillance. You can monitor our thoughts, I asked, unable to hide my alarm. Not specific thoughts. Our technology can detect patterns of neural activity associated with conflict, deception, or distress. It's how we've survived millennia of isolation, by accurately assessing threats. She leaned forward slightly. Tell me honestly, Caius. What would you do in my position? The question caught me off guard. If I learned visitors to my home were secretly planting surveillance, I'd remove them immediately. Yet we haven't. Thuron's expression became unreadable. We're still evaluating which of you can be trusted. This conversation is part of that assessment. Before I could respond, her communication device chimed softly. She checked it, then looked back to me. It seems Commander Kalen has just been informed that your team has been granted access to our central technology hub tomorrow. A gesture of goodwill from the Council. Her slight smile suggested this was no coincidence. I'm curious to see what choices you make with this information, Caius Thorne. She stood, signaling our meeting was over. The aide will escort you back to your quarters. Thank you for your candor. As I left, I felt troubled by what had just happened. The Viridians knew about our covert activities but were playing a deeper game. They wanted to see who would betray them and who could be trusted. I returned to the diplomatic quarter to find the team gathered in the common area. Excitement buzzed through the room as Kalen addressed them. Tomorrow represents a significant breakthrough, he announced. The Viridians have granted us access to their central technology hub, the heart of their power and communication systems. Dr. Petrova looked genuinely thrilled. This is extraordinary. Their energy conversion systems alone could revolutionize our understanding of physics. Kalen nodded, his expression professionally pleased, though I now recognized the calculated ambition beneath. We'll depart at 800 hours. Everyone should prepare documentation equipment and be well rested. As the meeting broke up, I noticed Kalen motion to 3 security team members to stay behind. I pretended to leave but lingered just outside the doorway, positioning myself where I could overhear their conversation. Tomorrow initiates Phase 2, Kalen said. His voice dropped to a near whisper. While the scientists are occupied with the main exhibits, your team will secure access to the targeting systems and propulsion technology. Vance will create a distraction if needed. I felt shocked at the mention of Vance. Was he part of this too, sir? What about extraction? One of the security team asked. Transport is prepared. Once we have the core technology samples, we move quickly. The diplomatic team will remain as cover while we transfer the priority materials. I withdrew before they noticed me, my mind racing. This wasn't just surveillance. They were planning to steal Viridian technology and leave some of us behind. I found Vance alone in his quarters, reviewing notes from our previous tour. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up, expression guarded. What's wrong? Kalen just mentioned you as part of Phase 2 tomorrow. Something about creating a distraction while they secured technology samples. Vance's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. He told you about that, I overheard him. Are you part of this, Vance? He sat down, putting his tablet aside and rubbed his face tiredly. Not the way you think. Kalen approached me yesterday, said he needed someone he could trust for a special security operation. I figured it was better to know what he was planning than be blindsided. And you didn't think to tell me I was going to tonight, Thorn. Look, I don't like this any more than you do. These people haven't shown any hostility. This feels wrong. I believed him, but needed to be sure. What exactly did Kalen tell you about tomorrow? Just that I should create a commotion in the eastern section of the facility at a specific time. He didn't explain why, but it doesn't take a genius to figure out it's a diversion. I made a decision. I need to speak with Kalen alone. Be careful, Vance warned. He's been different since we arrived, more secretive, more driven. I found Kalen in his quarters, reviewing schematics of what appeared to be the technology hub on his tablet. He looked up when I entered, quickly deactivating the display. Thorn, what can I do for you? I'd like to understand what's really happening tomorrow, sir. His eyes narrowed slightly. It's a scientific exchange as announced. With all due respect, Commander, I know about Phase 2. We were silent for a moment. Kalen's expression hardened, then relaxed into something almost like relief. Close the door, Thorn. I did, then stood at parade rest, waiting. Always been perceptive. It's why you were selected. Kalen set his tablet aside. What exactly do you think you know? You're planning to acquire Viridian technology samples during the tour tomorrow. Vance is meant to create a distraction while a security team secures the targets. Kalen studied me for a long moment, then nodded. That's part of it. Sit down, Thorn. You've earned the truth. I took the chair across from him, keeping my face neutral despite how upset I felt. The surface governments are afraid, Kalen said bluntly. And they should be. We've known about the Viridians for decades. Isolated encounters, recovered technology, intercepted signals. What we've learned is that they possess technological capabilities centuries beyond our own. They've shown no hostility, I pointed out. Yet, Kalen leaned forward. They monitor all our communications. They've interfered in our affairs. Aris practically admitted they manipulated the Cuban Missile Crisis. They have tunnel networks beneath every continent on Earth, and they've chosen to remain hidden, watching us. What happens when they decide surface humans are too dangerous to leave alone? I remained silent, letting him continue. Our mission was never just diplomatic contact. It's preemptive security. His voice took on an intensity I hadn't heard before. We need to understand their capabilities and acquire technological leverage, not for aggression, for survival, by stealing their technology, by securing technological parity. Kalen's expression hardened. Make no mistake, Thorn, the Viridians are not sharing their most advanced systems with us. What they've shown is carefully curated, impressive, but limited. Their true defensive and offensive capabilities remain hidden. I thought about what Thuron had revealed. The previous expeditions, their monitoring of our neural patterns, their technology so advanced it bordered on magical to us. And tomorrow, I asked. Tomorrow, we secure key examples of their propulsion and energy systems, enough to reverse engineer the principles. Kalen leaned back, studying me. You're one of our best, Thorn. I want you to lead the acquisition team. There's significant financial compensation waiting when we return to the surface with these samples. Your future would be secure. I needed to appear to consider his offer, to keep his trust long enough to decide my next move. How would we get the technology out? The Viridians monitor everything. Kalen smiled slightly. Their monitoring isn't as perfect as they'd like us to believe. We've developed countermeasures based on previous encounters. The extraction team will create a diplomatic incident as cover for the technology transfer. And the rest of the team, Dr. Petrova and the others, they'll remain as planned to complete the diplomatic mission. Their ignorance is genuine and useful. I nodded slowly, as if processing the plan. I'll need to review the specifics before tomorrow, of course. Kalen seemed satisfied with my response. Report back at 600 for final briefing. This operation will transform Earth's security posture, Thorn. You're part of something historic. I left Kalen's quarters with my decision already made. Whatever the Viridians' true nature and intentions, Theft and deception weren't the answer. The potential consequences for both civilizations were too grave. I needed to find Lyra. The Veridian communication device we'd been given for emergencies sat on my bedside table. I activated it, requesting an urgent meeting with Ambassador Lyra. The response came almost immediately. He would meet me in the small meditation garden, adjacent to our quarters, in 10 minutes. The garden was a peaceful space, with living plants growing in spiral patterns around a central pool. Lyra was already waiting when I arrived, his tall shape silhouetted against the bioluminescent flora. "Caius Thorne," he greeted me. "This is unexpected. I need to speak with you about tomorrow's visit to the technology hub." Lyra's expression remained diplomatic, but I sensed increased alertness. "What concerns you?" "Kalen is planning to steal samples of your propulsion and energy technology during the tour. He has a team prepared to create a distraction and secure the samples. I believe they have developed some means to counteract your surveillance." To his credit, Lyra didn't appear shocked. "You're betraying your commanding officer and your mission." "Why?" "Because it's wrong," I said simply, "and because the consequences could be disastrous for both our peoples." Lyra studied me for a long moment, his larger-than-human eyes unblinking. "High Sentinel Thuron suggested you might make this choice. You knew this was coming," we suspected. "Commander Kalen's neural patterns have shown increasing determination and secretiveness." Lyra touched a control on his wrist device. "Security protocols are now active. Thank you for your warning, Caius Thorne." Almost immediately, I noticed a change in the environment. The lighting throughout the diplomatic quarter shifted to a subtle red hue. The doors leading to the main corridor sealed themselves with a soft hiss. "What will happen to the others?" I asked. "Those involved in the planned theft will be detained using non-lethal methods. Those truly innocent will be treated with respect." Lyra's voice remained calm, but had lost its diplomatic warmth. "Please remain here." Through the garden's open archway, I watched as Veridian security forces entered the diplomatic quarter, tall figures carrying slender devices that resembled wands rather than conventional weapons. They moved with practiced efficiency, heading directly toward Kalen's quarters and the rooms of the security team members I'd seen him briefing. I heard a brief commotion, a strange buzzing sound, then silence. Minutes later, Vance appeared at the garden entrance, escorted by a Veridian guard. "Caius, what's happening?" he asked, confusion clear on his face. "Security measure," I replied, not wanting to reveal my role yet. 2 more team members joined us, Dr. Petrova and a junior scientist named Rivera. Both looked concerned but not frightened. Lyra returned with High Sentinel Thuron and several other Veridians I didn't recognize. Their expressions were solemn. "Where are the others?" I asked. "Detained," Thuron answered. "Safely and humanely, I assure you." She gestured for us to be seated on the curved benches surrounding the central pool. "We expected this betrayal," she said without preamble, "though we hoped for better." Previous surface expeditions followed similar patterns, diplomatic overtures followed by attempted technology appropriation. Dr. Petrova looked stunned. "I knew nothing about this. Our mission was scientific and diplomatic exchange." "We know," Thuron assured her. "Neural monitoring confirmed which team members were genuinely unaware of the covert objective." Vance looked at me, realization dawning. "You warned them," I nodded. "Kalen revealed the true mission parameters to me tonight, offered me leadership of the acquisition team." "And you refused," Lyra stated. "I made the ethical choice," I replied. "Stealing your technology wouldn't lead to security for either of our civilizations. It would start an escalation with unpredictable consequences." Thuron stepped forward, her presence commanding respect even in crisis. "The Council allowed this contact to identify which surface representatives could be trusted," she explained. "We've monitored your reactions, your choices, your neural responses to our civilization. Some of you have proven yourselves worthy of trust." She looked directly at me, then at Vance, Dr. Petrova, and Rivera. "You 4 will be separated from the others while we determine the appropriate response to this violation." Veridia is now in security lockdown. All access points to the surface are sealed. What about Kalen and his team? Rivera asked nervously. Will be detained until the council decides their fate, Lyra answered. No harm will come to them, but they have violated the most basic principles of diplomatic exchange. Vance moved closer to me, speaking quietly. Did you make the right call? They've locked down everything. I watched as Veridian security personnel moved efficiently through the diplomatic quarter, securing areas and establishing new protocols. Yes, I answered with conviction. Kalen's plan would have triggered something much worse than a lockdown. This is a civilization with technology centuries beyond ours, and tunnel access beneath every continent. Consider the alternatives if they felt genuinely threatened. As we were escorted to separate secure quarters, I caught a glimpse of Kalen being led down a corridor under guard. His eyes met mine, recognition and fury dawning as he realized my role in the operation's failure. I turned away, following my Veridian escort into an uncertain future. I had chosen to betray my mission, but honor my principles. Whether that choice would lead to reconciliation between our civilizations or deepen the division remained to be seen. Veridian Systems continued the lockdown procedure, ancient security protocols activating throughout the vast underground network that had remained hidden from the surface world for 15 millennia. 3 days passed after the lockdown of Veridia. The Veridian security forces kept us separated from Kalen and his conspirators, treating us with a cautious respect that suggested our status remained undetermined. My quarters became a comfortable cell, all amenities provided, but no freedom to leave. On the morning of the 4th day, a Veridian aide arrived to escort me to the council chamber, the same place where I'd spoken privately with Thuron. But this time, the full council would be present,